Excellent. Welcome to TADSummit Innovators. I am really happy to have Sandro from Enable Security here. Sandro, how are you?
Hey. Yeah, good. Doing well. Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome, because I read your newsletter every month. The RTC Security newsletter I consider to be required reading for anyone in communications telecoms, because it's unbiased, it's to the point, and brings a gamut of relevant security information. So it really is. I would say there may be, okay, I read mine simply because I write it, but beyond that, yours and two others are the only ones that, as soon as I see it announced, I'm reading it. And then, of course, adding in stuff that I think is really cool to my newsletter. But maybe you could provide a little bit of introduction to some of the services that Enable Security provides, so we can understand all the value you bring into the telecoms industry.
Sure. So yeah, we're a cybersecurity company, actually, doing pen testing and security consultancy. And we focus on voice over IP and WebRTC security. We have plenty of experience in web application security, API security, network security. But and I come from a different time, and in cybersecurity, we didn't even call it cybersecurity. We called it information security back then.
That's right.
Or hacking. But yeah, in the past few years, as in couple of years, we focused on RTC security and real-time communication security, which is quite a niche, but it's a very interesting area, and there's not many people publishing and doing things from a cybersecurity point of view. So we like that, to have that particular focus.
Exactly. And who are, if you can, name some of your clients that have used Enable Security for pen testing?
So we don't name our clients. In fact, that's always a bit of a problem. But we've had CPaaS clients, or
UCaaS clients and CSaaS clients.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine which ones. And PBX vendors, SBC vendors, some web conferencing platforms. We've tested
those.
Because
of the WebRTC,
stuff like that. Usually,
cool. No, that's good to know.
Service providers and vendors, essentially.
Exactly. As far as I'm concerned, if you're in real-time communications, you should be keeping track of the issues through your RTC Security newsletter, and looking at pen testing, or even just some of the consulting services, to ensure that you're protecting the services you're providing to your customers at state-of-the-art level. Because if you don't, guess what? Crap happens. So what are some of the trends that we're seeing in the market at the moment, Sandro?
Yeah. Should I share my screen, or how do we do this?
It's purely up to you. And I think that, it makes it easy, because then people can just sort of, some people will be listening to the podcast. So definitely make sure you read it out. Some people do watch it visually because of the numbers we get on YouTube. So I'd recommend both ways.
I'm trying to find the button to press.
Oh, right. So what you need to do is, and it should be share screen. It's normally bottom bar. After it's like participants, chat, share screen. No, you're not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it because I'm using the web version.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, could be a problem, but it doesn't matter. I can share the slides afterwards.
Yeah, perhaps you do that.
And most people listen to it anyway, so it's fine. Don't worry.
Yep. All right. So yeah, what I did was, I went through the last 6 newsletters that we sent out until June. The RTC Sec newsletter. And basically thought, okay, we could discuss the top 4 or 5 trends that we have seen and covered, depending on the time that we have.
Exactly.
In the last 6 months. And yeah, the way I did it was, of course, I used a bit of AI like everyone else. In this case, I found Claude.ai to give me much better results actually
Yeah.
than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still used ChatGPT a little bit, and gave it the last 6 months, worth of markdown files, and told it, hey, give me the top 4 or 5 trends.
Yeah.
But I did write my own slides, even though I'm not showing the slides here. These are my own notes.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think I will just jump right into the first one that we have. So the first one, the title is Increased Focus on WebRTC Vulnerabilities and Security.
Yeah.
This is not something that you see it being talked about too much, actually, in the general cybersecurity world.
Yeah.
However, on our newsletter, we have been, of course, focusing on this.
Yeah.
And the first thing that is interesting is the various vulnerabilities that were fixed in the WebRTC project, the one that all the web browsers basically use. I wish I could share my screen now because I wanted to show the websites. Yeah.
Okay. Let me. Well, maybe I can. Let me see where
maybe
I can share it. So let me just
could share a tab.
Okay, it'll be preview. Let's see. Share.
Okay. Let's see if this works.
Oh wow, so it's updated. So here we go. Apps. Oh God. Okay, I'm just going to share the desktop. Share.
All right, then we get to see everything.
And then get to share it. I know. Photo. No, not photos. Preview. No. Okay, there you go. Downloads. Because it was. There you go.
Okay, you got this. Yep.
Let me just make that full screen. Hopefully you can see that okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Let me then go to the next page. We've done that one. Here you go. So we're focusing on WebRTC vulnerabilities and security, which of course, as you rightly pointed out, there's not that much written, well, because Google controls the information. But anyway.
So if you click on the first link, if that works, I don't know the link. Oh, yeah, it does actually. Okay, cool. So yeah, and this is from last month actually. There was almost I would say almost every month there is some security fix that affects web browsers that had to do with WebRTC.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the project is highly insecure. It's just that there is especially one particular person, Cassidy Kim, a bug hunter, who's always submitting really incredible vulnerabilities and getting them fixed, getting paid for it. It's not huge money compared to what you would get in the black market or let's say gray market maybe. But they're doing a great job in fixing all these really corner cases. It's hard to find details about these security vulnerabilities that affect the web browsers. But yeah, last month there was someone on Twitter who's posting about Google security fixes, Google Chrome security fixes, and they just put this semi-cryptic text saying, oh yeah, to reproduce this security issue, you first need to initialize the encoder with specific settings, then start encoding the video, then change the resolution, the buffer allocation gets desynchronized, and that's when you get a heap buffer overflow during the encoding. So it's specific. I think this person has a very specialized fuzzer or has done so much of this that they know what to do.
Exactly.
Kind of how to find these combinations.
Oh yeah.
Excellent stuff.
Exactly. But we've seen that, for example, with virtual machines, in trying to get virtual machines to crash out and then explore to see what other processes are running on the the machine that you're running in somebody's data center.
Yep. So just because you have such a vulnerability in Chromium, it doesn't mean that you necessarily can take over the machine, okay?
No.
It's not easy to develop exploits for this, and you usually need to chain multiple vulnerabilities to actually get remote. But it's something that we also mentioned in one of the links. I don't know which one it was, in one of the CVEs that we reported about.
Okay.
But there were there was at least one of them which was publicly being exploited by, nation state hackers.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah, and the who was it? One of the cybersecurity U.S. government entities published some details saying, "Hey, this is a major thing. You have to fix this because it's being abused."
Exactly, because its penetration is so broad. I mean, we all have browsers, multiple browsers running all the time. So this is critical.
Yes, exactly. That was back in January, in fact, that they released this. Anyway, so that's one area where WebRTC is getting some interest in terms of security. Of course, WebRTC has security built in, you could say, but there is also a lack of security research in WebRTC, and we're trying to compensate for that. Our last publication was about vulnerability that affects WebRTC media servers. Not all of them. It's kind of a generic vulnerability. It's a vulnerability not in the specs themselves, but in what they have omitted to include in the specs. It's about the gap between one protocol and another. So it's really interesting. We have published a blog post. I updated the slides after I sent you the slides with a link to the article. So the article on our blog is called "A Novel Denial of Service Vulnerability Affecting WebRTC Media Servers."
Understood.
And we reported this to open source projects. We found this in Asterisk, FreeSwitch, RTP Engine, who are coming from a voice over IP world and have implemented WebRTC features to handle WebRTC media. So they handle DTLS, which is what we're kind of attacking in a way. We also found it in a proprietary solution, an SBC, a proprietary SBC as well, that implements WebRTC. And we found it also in a very well-known voice over IP platform that I'm not going to name yet, but we will be publishing a paper and hope to include a bit of a small case study there. We have reported the vulnerabilities to everyone except the SBC. We did not manage yet. But yeah, it's being fixed in many places, not everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, I think this sort of stuff is interesting when abused. Denial of service, which affects the media, which causes the vulnerable media server to not be able to take new video calls, basically. That's a big deal, right, with WebRTC.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been in the past, we have also given a presentation with you, right, with your TADSummit and so on, about denial of service, how big of a deal it is for WebRTC and voice over IP.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's the first topic. And why is it important? Well, WebRTC is everywhere. It's in our browsers. You no longer need a plugin. Thank you. Except for Zoom, maybe. For sharing my screen on Zoom, at least. But yeah, I'm really happy to be using WebRTC and not having to install all these different plugins, all of which could have their own vulnerabilities. So this is
Correct.
a great project, the
Exactly.
WebRTC
No,
project.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And it's good to have it, like anything else, right? It's important that these vulnerabilities are ironed out, are found, and fixed in a responsible manner.
Exactly. Exactly.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yep.
All right. So the next one is about, concerns about voice over IP and conferencing platform security. It's quite generic, but the first slide about this, there's a second slide after it, is focusing more on WebEx, because Cisco WebEx had some interesting incidents. Earlier this year, there was this leak from the German military where you could go to the Russian Facebook equivalent, the Russian social network, VK, and listen to a call where the German military is discussing some interesting things, and it was leaked out there.
Yeah.
And this call actually happened over WebEx.
Yeah.
It seems that the call was leaked out because the call actually happened over PSTN and not on the WebEx application. So if you're doing calls over PSTN in a foreign country whose equipment might be owned, that is, compromised by foreign intelligence agencies, then yes, this is not military grade, let's put it that way.
Correct. Exactly.
So maybe it's not the fault of WebEx itself in this case.
No. But
However,
there needs to
they
be
shouldn't
processes.
be using this. Yeah,
exactly. And that I see as a gap in terms of just the training, in terms of in these scenarios, this is how you need to ensure that you have end-to-end security, so nothing can leak through a PSTN link.
Exactly. So if you have such a policy in the military, right, you would also need to apply that policy technically by disabling PSTN access for such calls.
Yep.
For example.
Simple as that.
Yeah. It usually is more simply said than done, of course.
I know.
So it's I'm not trying to simplify things. The second one was more recent, actually. There was also WebEx related in the previous slide.
Oh, sorry.
And there was this this post. Let me just open the website on mine. And,
okay.
Yeah, basically, this was covered. We covered this last month.
Yeah.
It was on the German media as well. Unfortunately, my German is not that good, not good at all, actually. And I missed most of the details, and Google Translate is not that great for German. However, what it seemed to translate to is that WebEx, if you could get a WebEx meeting ID from a past session, from a past meeting, you could guess the next meeting IDs for the same entity.
Gotcha.
And there was a political not really hackers. I mean, technical people with political, a small political party or something like that, who found this out and started publishing about it. And this affected various entities. So this affected, I think, political parties in Germany, German government, and then it turned out that it affected the Dutch government and various others who used. So it seems everyone who used WebEx, both on-site and also the cloud version. Because the government can have their own on-site version, apparently. So there's that. And then the main journalist who was covering this and was experimenting with this as well, together with this group, seemed to find a bypass which let her in, even without the PIN code, to these
Oh.
meetings, right? So finding the meeting ID is not enough quite often if there is a PIN. And in many cases, you have a policy where you would have a PIN for. But she found that if she presses the hash key on the phone when she uses PSTN to call into that meeting ID, somehow she's let in.
Yeah.
Which sounds like the 80s, or at least 90s. And yeah, we've done these things, these sort of attacks on old PBX systems, but it sounds a bit strange. It could be, in my opinion, that when you press hash, you are put in a waiting room and someone lets you in. Then I don't know, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Apparently, the Dutch started on the main news TV stations were really angry about this, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of drama there. So that's WebEx. And then if we go back to that. And then of course we covered various vulnerabilities during the months, which have to do with VoIP phones. VoIP phones might look more secure than your desktop, maybe, but they do have their own vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
You have provisioning. There was this person, Dutch person, who published a tool for decoding, decrypting, yelling configuration files, for example. All these phones have a big problem. When you set them up, you need to provision usernames and passwords to access the SIP platform. And provisioning is a huge deal. It's a big problem. It's very hard to. It's a chicken and the egg problem where you have to provide credentials, but you kind of need to provide those credentials in a secure way, and you can't because you need the phone to go grab the credentials from somewhere. It's quite a big problem, and many providers, they encrypt the configuration so that it looks like it's encrypted, and it is encrypted, but it's encrypted quite often. It used to be, at least. With a static password that Yelling would have for all their phones.
Exactly, 00000.
It might be more complex than that. It might be a long string and so on. But that doesn't matter because, of course, you get the firmware, you do reverse engineering, you write your own code, which does the same thing, and you can decrypt. So there are ways that they fix this, but of course, they had this, and many other vendors had this. And that's just one problem, right? There were other problems which give you full access to the phones and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into these details because there's so much, but check out the newsletter, of course, if you're into this.
Absolutely. Some great review there. Cool. On to the next one.
So AI, of course, we couldn't avoid AI. I have been avoiding AI for years, but this year it was just very difficult to do that, to live under a stone. And sometime this year we had on our newsletter, we actually came across some news that was of interest, and specifically, of interest to the voice over IP and WebRTC audience. I think the first one was about some research published by who was this?
Which one? The audio
Security Intelligence, and they were okay. And there's X-Force. Okay, so this is the IBM people. And essentially they were saying, okay, you can easily start, if you have access to the audio stream, you could give responses, right?
Yes, exactly.
And mimic the same voice of the if you have access to a banking audio stream,
Yeah.
you could ask for a password when they shouldn't, and so on and so forth, and take care of that. So the thing that makes sense to me is that, of course, in the first place, you need access to that audio stream, or you could also do video, of course.
Yeah.
But the whole point, and what was interesting, is that when you start doing these things with LLMs, then you can really scale such attacks. So
Exactly.
in the past, you would have needed, whole call centers of people and so on.
Yeah.
But with LLMs, things have become so fast,
Yes.
that this actually would scale. And at the same time, in fact, either in this same newsletter, or was it the same one or another one? In February. Yes, in the same newsletter on the short news, we actually covered, there was some malware analysis, and they were mentioning how the malware was using the Agora SDK.
Oh, that's right, yes. That was, the Gold Factory, Gold Kerfu.
Yep, Gold Pickaxe. So, and this used some things related to deep fake and so on and so forth. So this is an interesting direction that
exactly. But I think the key is it can scale. It's not something that's like highly targeted. This, you can just salt it out as widely as possible, and then just hope you get a tiny percent of people that provide that information, and then from that.
And it's becoming really realistic, right? So when it comes to deep fake voice, when it comes to what the LLMs are responding with, it's not easy to distinguish between real. It's almost impossible, you could say. It makes sense when coupled with voice over IP attacks, especially. That's quite interesting. But that's another area. All right. So the fourth one is more kind of generic. I linked to this. This essay by Bert Hubert. Now, Bert Hubert is someone who's been into this since a long time. He's well known to be, the DNS server developer, and did various other things. But he had an essay and a talk as well about resilience. And he does mention voice over IP or telephony. And he's talking about how resilient is our technology when it comes to, war or before war, if we're talking about war. And what I found interesting is that it's basically mimicking a lot of what I think. We have too many layers, and he gives the examples. If you check out his article, he posted some nice pictures of certain phone systems that are used in U.S. naval military naval systems, and these phones, you can throw water at them, you can do whatever to them, they will keep working.
Exactly.
Now, this is quite extreme, of course, but when you compare that to something like the example that he gives, which is the network by KPN, which is meant to replace the emergency system, it has so many failure points, right? VPN here, VPN there, all sorts of layers. Then you have voice over IP with all its disastrous failure points. So it was a very interesting presentation and essay, in my opinion, and we
Yes.
covered that from our point of view, of course.
Mhm.
And of course, we've been covering denial of service,
Yes.
which is when things don't go wrong by mistake, right?
Correct.
Unfortunately, things go wrong by mistake as well, and that's partially what he's talking about. He's in his essay, he's saying essentially, look, our systems fall over just by themselves, and
Yes.
often enough during the year. So what are we gonna do when someone tries to make them fall over, right? And in the newsletter, in fact, in the next slide, I give examples of for example, Juno's SIP-ALG vulnerabilities.
Yes.
There's lots of vulnerabilities in firewalls, network firewalls, where they inspect the SIP protocol, trying to do application layer gateway stuff, trying to fix SIP, and in the process, if you send certain malformed SIP messages, they might crash.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is not just Juniper, but also other vendors have had similar problems. Just not so much this year somehow. I think this was the main one this year, but the previous years we have covered so many of these. Maybe they're just not publishing the security fixes.
Could be. You know, it's just because there's no data there doesn't mean it's not happening.
And we had a very short presentation at Camelio World showing Camelio configuration patterns that can lead to vulnerabilities. And since we focus on denial of service, and Camelio is often used as a security device for SIP servers behind it. Usually also open source, but not always. Then you want Camelio to be robust, right?
Exactly.
And we showed various configuration issues that could lead to major problems in terms of bringing Camelio down. Camelio itself is pretty robust, but you can also configure it in a way that it is no longer as robust as you would like it to be.
Exactly. No, and I went through that presentation at Camelio World, and it was excellent. Well done.
Thank you. So
and this one I care about.
This one is yours. This one is your favorite, I'm sure. That's why I included it as a bonus. The Claude.ai didn't come up with this one, also because the Twilio OT incident, we did not cover it yet. It will be
cool.
Next month. I mean, this month.
End of this month. Yay.
Yep. So we'll link to your article and your research. And Cisco Duo had similar things as well earlier this year. I mean, 2FA via SMS and voice calls. It's not the right way to do second factor authentication, in my opinion.
No. NIST has basically downgraded it for a long time now, but it's convenient. Exactly. It's better than nothing, has been the general approach.
Yes.
But it's in the clear, and it can be hacked, and
stored everywhere.
Exactly.
There are so many problems with this, right? This was never. Look, when you look at how OTP is done with TOTP, for example, which is not ideal, by the way, but the way it's done is it's being built with some sort of security in mind, right?
Yes.
You store it in a way where you treat it as a security token, at least.
Yes.
So you should not put it on S3 buckets. But when it comes to SMSs, you don't know that it should not be, or CDRs.
Yes.
You don't know that they should not be on S3 buckets necessarily.
Yep.
So there's a huge difference there, because while one technology, I mean, multiple technologies with SMS and voice, of course, there's many technologies involved, but these technologies are not necessarily built with security in mind. They,
Yes.
at least not security, the sort of security that we need in 2024.
Correct.
And I think that's the underlying issue there. And we as a cybersecurity community have been complaining about this. We complain a lot about this for a long time.
Exactly.
And of course,
well, the Chaos
incidents,
Computing Club was saying, look,
Yep.
we've talked about this years ago, and it's
Of course.
still happening, and here's why.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, this is like, well, of course it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, just to wrap up, link to subscribe to your newsletter. And it's monthly reading. I love what you do there. I think it's critical for anyone in the industry, because you do it at, there's a high level where you cover, well, here are some of the issues, and then you can click on the links and then get into the weeds on the material. So it's a great way in just one newsletter to cover all the hot topics in VoIP and WebRTC. And as you say, test. That pen testing is critical, because you can never rely on...
There's not enough security testing being done in voice over IP or WebRTC solutions. In part for good reason, because there's not enough pen testers who know how to do security testing of this. So we need to publish more. We need to, and I think there needs to be a bit more knowledge in the cybersecurity area. Yes. Some of the voice over IP people have a solid understanding of security. So that and WebRTC also, of course, it has security features that are modern, and so it's not too bad in certain aspects, but there are lots of problems, especially to do with denial of service, which is a huge deal in real-time communications.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And then results in the bad actor sending you requests for large amounts of Bitcoin. But we'll delve into
that's one way to abuse that. Yes, definitely.
And that was definitely happening last year and the year before. Less so in terms of reporting. I've not seen as much reporting. And you know how it is. You ask people to say, how's it been? I think people did react to that and put some basic protections where they had none in the past. So I think, as always, it's a slow, incremental improvement. And as long as you can make it hard enough, then people focus on another easy target.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there has been protection. Of course, the big service providers do have some protection. So they've got their firewalls, they've got their SBCs and so on. But the problem is that even those guys were hit, right?
Yes.
And why is that? Because it was never really tested properly. From an offensive point of view, the vendor will tell you who sells you, or the service provider, if you use something like, from one of the service providers who provide this stuff, will tell you, hey, this handles this much amount of calls per second and so on. But when we have tested these things, they ended up breaking.
Yes.
And why is that? The only reason that I can give is there was no real testing. So there was no backing up of these claims. They were maybe tested in lab environment, which, we all know how that works.
It works. Yay, we're done.
Sell it.
Exactly. But no, Sandro, this has been great. Really enjoyed this catch up, reviewing just a few. I mean, your newsletters have so much more in them. But again, thank you for all the work you do in this.
Thanks, Alan.
Great fan and supporter, and look forward to speaking again in the near future.
Same here. Thank you very much.